everybody, long time no see. I know I haven't been doing a lot of videos lately, but I've just been so busy finishing up my dissertation. And I'm also teaching this semester too, so too many things on my play to-do list. I just want to respond to the recent craziness surrounding this hysteria of the Trump policy. Honestly, I'm really starting to miss the Bush years, and that's really saying something. People were way more normal back then and way more open to talk about real issues with more honesty and sincerity. The people on the left, well, almost everybody on my Facebook feed, have this weird idea that we are obligated, through the government no less, to help refugees. But of course, only these specific refugees because, during the 80s and 90s, when there were Chinese people risking their lives to escape the communist persecutions, at least that's what they say they were escaping from, killing themselves most of the time, I don't remember hearing anybody batting an eye other than, oh, look how brave these people are trying to get to our country. This clearly proves that our country is the awesomest of them all. And this clearly proves that China is just a shithole. But hey, hashtag Asian lives don't matter, right? Now, I didn't come to the US as a refugee, it's true, and I'm privileged compared to a lot of people. But this idea that people are somehow entitled to enter a foreign border is just fucking insane to me. When my mom and I slept on the streets somewhere to stand in line for the visa, this was when I was not even a teenager yet. And the attitude with us was always, maybe we will get lucky and some kind-hearted person will sign our visa. Keep in mind that in the late 90s, the US will only pretty much pass out visa for the quote-unquote essential workers. So these are the people who have to have somebody to sponsor them on the other side of the paradise, in order to get into the United States. And in terms of family visitations, they are very restricted. So, they pretty much will not give out a visa for family members visiting these people who were already sponsored. Or at least they have a big quota on it. So this is the case with my mother and I, because we were trying to visit my father in the United States, right? And we got through essentially through pure luck. I mean, nobody thought that we were going to get the visa, by the way. In fact, my mother had to get approval from her boss to even leave China. And he signed with some cynicism to my mother, something like, fine, I'll sign off on this for you, because guess what? I know you're not going to get the visa. I mean, you can imagine his surprise at the result. Now, I tend to believe the reason we got the visa was the fact that they only let a limited amount of people in to get the visa per day, and the day before it was our turn, they shut the door right in our face. Meaning that the next day, my mother and I were the very first ones to see an ambassador. Not only so, but we happened to catch a young southern Chinese woman. I mean, she looked like she was probably newly hired. And this was our determiner of our fate. Well, even though they have a quota system in place, it's not unreasonable to think that this was our luck. The fact that if you're new on your job and you start your day and there are these two females, as your first client, they have all the proofs, all the documents and stuff. I mean, nothing wrong with what they bring, whatever. I mean, would you in that place deny your first client of the day? I mean, I don't know about you, but I would think that most people wouldn't, I mean, unless you just had a bad day, but why would you have a bad day when your day just started? This was really early, like 7 a.m. in the morning. So that's how we got the visa. And the entire time when we stood there, with full humility in understanding that, yes, they had the right to deny us the visa with no good reason at all. Countries have the right, for whatever reason, to not let you into their borders. Just like individuals have the right to not let strangers into their house. It's the same idea. I mean, anyways, I don't understand why this is so hard to understand. Whatever. But the most common argument is, oh, well, you're just saying that it's easy for you to say because you can't understand what it feels like to not see your family member for such a long period of time. Well, actually, I can. Okay, my parents tried to get my grandfather into the U.S. once because his health was failing and he didn't have anybody to take care of him. And they got him all these documents, and he had to travel in the largest population in the world. So you can imagine it's hell. I mean, the transportation is hell, the line that he has to stand in is hell, and then there's also the pollution. Not to mention my grandfather's rather, old and fragile by then. So he ended up being denied all 3 times, despite all of this. And after that, he just told my parents that he gave up. I mean, he's not going to go through that anymore. And then about a year later, he passed away. So we've been apart for almost a decade during that time, and it was especially difficult for my father and his son, right? But in the end, we've all accepted it, okay? We accepted that the US had the right to let whoever they want into their borders. We accepted that it was our choice to leave China to look for a better life. We accepted that our choice, that our decision will inevitably risk separation of friends and families. But those are our choices. And once we left, there are a lot of consequences. So for example, even though my parents actually wanted nothing more than to go back, I mean, they don't exactly like it here. In reality, they really can't. I mean, living in China for them for a long period of time or permanently, from many perspectives, would no longer be an option. But that's the situation. I mean, that's the consequence we took. So while I empathize with the situation now, I empathize with the people from these Middle Eastern countries who are being affected. They have to realize that this is the way of the world. Like, honestly, if one day or in the future that China consistently produce terrorists and the rapists or whatever, for whatever reason, I mean, it's not necessarily their fault, and most people are not like that, but they just happen to consistently produce terrorists, even if 2 per month or something. I mean, especially like the population in China, you can imagine is huge. So 2 per month is not a whole lot if you compare to the actual population, but they do it consistently. Yes, I would actually support a ban of visa from China. I would, honestly. And even if this affects me, I would support it. And I tend to believe that my parents would too. I mean, they would have emotional attachment towards it more than me, but I think they would understand, because it is a dangerous situation. They can put themselves in other people's shoes, and they understand that if it's the reverse, if the United States consistently output terrorists going into China, they would 100% support, China shutting its borders against the United States. And by the way, right now, because of the situation with China's growing economy, there are a lot of people from Europe and elsewhere, Africa, Europe, who want to go into China to get a job, because a lot of places in China actually hire them with a much higher income than they would in their home country. But right now, because of the situation, Chinese government actually are holding their permanent resident card from them. It's really difficult for a foreigner to get any kind of permanent residency in China. And they're really pissed about this, but this is the situation, right? I mean, because China, they don't want all their intellectuals to go out from their borders, and then they don't want foreigners to come in and replace those intellectuals and somehow maybe even replace the population. That's just the way it is. It's the same in every fucking country. So this is what I mean by it's fair for everybody, because every country would do it. So the situation is, I truly perceive that there are a lot of people, I'm not pointing finger here, but this is just what I've seen. There are a lot of people from these Muslim countries. They are becoming rather spoiled, because there's so many people from the left, so many people with all the social power to speak for them. And again, this is the same everywhere. I mean, this is one of the reasons I see the silver lining at the Asian lives don't matter kind of attitude, even though it's getting kind of dangerous, because eventually these people on the left, I mean, they consistently ignore the fact that, for example, Asian people on the average as population as a whole earn a higher income than whites. than Caucasians. Okay, I mean, they're just pretty much ignoring that because they haven't made the decision what to do about the Asian people. They can only hope that the Asian people will support them, will be on board with their ideology, and yeah, I mean, they have a chance to succeed with that. Okay, but if not, then eventually, after all the white people have been oppressed, and Asians will be next. I'm just saying, okay. But this is the silver lining, that the fact that nobody speaks for Asian people is how Asian people thrive, because that's how we didn't get spoiled. I mean, if there were so many people speaking for the Asians from the beginning, I think, Asian people will probably right now be just as spoiled, if not more. This is just my conjecture, but I tend to think this is true. So, these people from these Muslim countries, I mean, they are spoiled and they demand things that don't belong to them as a given right. I mean, citizenship is not a human right. Free speech is a human right. I would actually say that people, every single human being, is entitled to free speech, even over the entitlement of life. So you can, for example, debate about whether you agree with the death penalty or not. Like, for example, after everything that Hitler did, does he still have the right to live? Even if you vote no, he doesn't have the right to live, he is still entitled to free speech. He is. This is really what I truly believe. That is a human right that's actually being oppressed right now. This is the ironic part. I mean, people want to give people things that's not a human right, and they want to press things that actually are human rights. So it's kind of pissing me off. I'm just saying. Anyways, now, this doesn't mean that I'm in full support of the ban, okay? I'm not particularly familiar with all the detail of this new order, but I, for one, wouldn't be for permanent residents being stranded at airports and are not allowed to come back. They should be allowed to come back if they're permanent residents. And I don't know what the policy is now for permanent residents naturalized to become citizens. So the last time I checked, if you're a permanent resident for a certain number of years, you are automatically naturalized as citizens. So if they wish to change this law, I would say they need to do it for everybody instead of having the special treatment one way or another. I would also prefer some kind of regulation so that people are stopped at airports from leaving rather than they leave and then they're told that they cannot come back. That's just me. Okay, so if they cannot come back, they should be told at airports that they cannot leave, or they should be told that, well, if you leave, then you cannot come back. I mean, don't just like, oh, okay, you can go, and then when they try to come back into the border, sorry, that's just terrible. But honestly, though, if we just go back to the way things were, how things should be run, which is that immigration is not about charity, okay? It's about whether you, as a foreigner, can convince the country you want to immigrate to that you will be a value contributor to their society. And you have someone to sponsor you as proof. If they just did that, things wouldn't be in this mess right now. I mean, I sincerely believe that. So this doesn't mean that we shouldn't help refugees in any capacity possible. I just simply think that the government should not be the one to do it. Maybe in the past when information doesn't travel very easily and it's more difficult for individual donation to happen, maybe I might have been okay with using taxes to fund refugee support or refugee aid, but now in our day and age, it's so easy to start a GoFundMe page, a Kickstarter, or whatever, to fund whatever project you want. I mean, nowadays it makes it easier to even fund your own business, your own project, whatever, with the internet, with how information travels. So it should be up to the individual volunteer and private organizations to do so. I mean, I haven't really thought very deeply about the problem of welfare. I don't know if I'm really for or against welfare to whatever capacity. But at least, to me, it's pretty clear with foreign charity aids. So it should not be in the hands of government because they will inevitably abuse it. If a refugee wants to come in, I'm not 100% against like any refugee who want to come in, but if they want to come in, he or she has to have a sponsor who is willing to provide a refugee with resources and housing. And they can, then set up private contracts regarding, like, let's say, how long the refugee is staying, what would the refugee be doing, set up education, whatever. So it's just like when my family immigrated to the United States, this should be a no-brainer. But, forcing people's taxes to fund for refugees is somehow a virtue now. I mean, because somehow people believe that these refugees are not human beings for some reason. I mean, that they're all just, white swans or something. They're all just good relative to the people who have. Like, the have-nots are just better than the people who have things. I mean, I cannot think of a more communist idea than this, honestly. I mean, why aren't people learning? This used to be what happened in China, used to be what happened in Russia, used to be what happened in Romania, for example. They spread this ideology that, poor people are just like the best people. I mean, the poor people should just get the stuff from like the rich people because they're just better, because they're just oppressed or some shit. I've encountered people who are poor, who are just terrible people. I'm sorry. Like, quite a lot of people, from my estimation, that I've encountered are kind of bad people from my ethical standards. So that's why now I find it difficult to call myself a humanist. That's why I call myself an apoanthrope. The point is, I don't want my taxes to end up in the hands of ISIS or rapists, people who want to bomb themselves, or people who want to come and drain the welfare system to their benefit. No, I'm not stereotyping. Okay, I'm not. I'm not saying that I think even a significant portion of the refugees are these people, but even if only one of these people come in, I just don't want that. Okay? I simply think there's a better way to help the people who deserve to be helped. And instead of the bad people just taking advantage of the people who deserve to be helped. And I also don't personally think that somehow refugees should objectively take precedence over people who need help on a daily basis who are not refugees. The people that I personally know who, if they had help, they would really be beneficial to any society that they stay in. So why is it more moral to help refugees than these people that I care about? Well, you decide.